Okay, so perceived responsiveness can change how useful you think a site is. And in fact, actually, I'm trying to tie this into my research, which I deal with time. Okay, do we have a clock in here?
I don't know.
Good, good. Who has a watch? Not a clock in your smartphone, but a watch. Okay? What time do you say?
9:25.
9:25. Okay, what do you say?
The same.
Okay? 9:26. 26. Do I hear 23? 9:30. Oh, okay. Which one's correct?
Time flies.
Oh, it does. Sorry?
There's no correct.
Thank you. You are absolutely correct. Okay? What actually is time? Do we even know?
Relativeness.
If you ask physicists, they will tell you they don't know. And in fact, some of them think that there's no such thing as time. Okay, so what happens to time? What happens to time in the general relativity equations? It falls out.
Είναι και ένα άλλο παιδί ακούσαμε. Μπορεί να έφυγε.
Okay? You know, some people argue that what it is it's the arrow for entropy. Going from higher to lower entropy is time. But that's kind of arguable. Is that going to be constant? No, not at all. So what this responsiveness requires reference to time, and we don't even know what time is. Every one of us has our own definition of time, and actually even Einstein had a saying that he liked to use, which is that, and this is looking at the fact that the time durations are very subjective. Okay, your experience of a duration of time changes based upon your frame of mind. And the way he said it is that
If you're in love.
a minute on a hot stove feels like an hour. But an hour with a beautiful woman in your lap feels like a minute. Okay? And actually there has been a fair amount of research that has looked at this and said that, yes, in fact, physically, your perceptions of time change based upon your frame of mind. When you are in an activated frame of mind, when your cortisol is elevated, when you're excited, your perception of time slows down, literally. Any of you ever been in a car accident? Or had some sort of a major thing that frightened you?
Yeah.
Okay. How long did it feel like that happened?
Forever.
It took a long time,
Yeah.
didn't it? Yeah. If you ever get into a situation like that, you'll see that. Your perception of that time gets extended. So, what is perceived responsiveness? Okay? So this gets back to, very briefly, I will say, and I was trying to make this point earlier and I lost it, I apologize. When you're trying to define these terms, you need to go to your target market and ask them. Do a study. Find out whether they think it's useful. Find out whether they think it's responsive. Okay? So the only way you can tell that is to ask them. You cannot assess it yourself. The people in the marketing department cannot assess it. The people in management can't assess it. Nobody can assess it except your actual customers. So go and do a market study, ask them what they think. That's how you can tell. So how does my research get into this? Well, if I have a group of people who are trying to assess a website, they may have different characteristics about how they perceive that website. And if I'm forcing them to all work together, they try to come to some sort of an agreement about how they're going to use time. Where you see this particularly is when you have teams that have to do some sort of a task. And there's been some research that has shown that these teams will very naturally start off by gathering information, and at the halfway point of the task, they will switch and go to actually executing based on the information they have. So they gather information but don't do anything the first half of the time. And then they do stuff based on that and ignore further information for the second half. And groups that don't make that transition well fail at their task. So suppose your team is using a website and half of you thinks that that website responds really well, and half of you think that it responds really poorly. Okay? Those of you that think it's responding really well, your sense of time is stretched out because you're actually happier, and so you feel like you have spent more time than you actually have at doing a task. The people who don't like it, who don't work well with it, who doesn't think that it does not respond well, have a negative approach to the site, and their experience of this duration gets even worse then. And so they think that they've spent a long time doing it, where they've only spent this long. Now the problem is that you both want to change, and this happens naturally. This is not something you think about, but you both want to change going from gathering information to executing the task at the halfway point. The people who like the website, that's the halfway point. The people who hate the website, that's the halfway point. Okay, what happens now?
No.
Sorry?
We understood. Checking if they understand.
Okay, so when you get to that situation, you have everybody arguing about what time it is. Okay, these people are saying, come on, we gotta hurry up. We don't have much time left. We've got to start working now. And these people are saying, no, we've still got plenty of time. We haven't done that much. Okay, and so they disagree about that transition, and they get into a state that I call temporal dissonance, which is where we have a conflict about the way we use time. It is important because it's controlling how we access the site, how we do our task. And so it controls, we get a negative response then to the events that are around that. And so what you end up with then is suddenly everybody who's on your team is responding negatively to each other, to the website, to the task, and may not, in fact, finish the task. So you end up with a group that, if they have differences in how they perceive the responsiveness, you can end up with a group that simply refuses to use the site, or uses it inefficiently or poorly, and maybe even just fails completely at their task. So this doesn't fit real well into the TAMP model, but I'm trying to do my best. So there you go. Like I said, my research is on time. There's a lot of different ways that affects how you interact with things, whether you focus on the present, the past, or the future. Do you multitask, or do you prefer to work on one task at a time and be uninterrupted? Are you a lark or an owl? Okay, how many of you think this class is happening way too late at night? Okay. How many of you think this class is happening too late at night?
Yeah. Okay.
Especially today.
So most of you are probably owls, and that doesn't really surprise me. There would be some self-selection, which actually I suppose is appropriate given that I'm in Athens, that everybody would be owls, right?
We're Greek anyway, so we stay out late.
Okay. So some of you are kind of looking at yourselves and saying, okay, this guy's this techie guy. Okay, good. So I get this question a lot, and I thought I would actually address it a little bit, which is that as a technical person, I actually experienced the fact that my managers used time very differently from me. Okay? How many of you have managers who insist that you be sitting in your chair at a particular time during the day? Does that make any sense? Of course not. Okay? Us techie people don't think that's important. What's important is whether we got the job done or not. And yes, sometimes I need to interact with other people, and so probably I should make sure that I'm around at least some of the time. But a lot of my work was done alone. most of my work was done alone. And so whether I was there in the morning or the evening didn't actually matter. And in fact, it made more sense for me to be there in the evening because my particular chronotype, which is to say, do I get up early or late in the morning? Do I stay up late? And in fact, I get up late in the morning. And I stay up fairly late because my body works better that way. It's actually a biological rhythm. It's physical. It's not something you can change. You can adapt. Everybody argues with me about this. Yes, if you're an evening person, yes, you can get up early in the morning and go to bed early at night, but you will never be as effective as you would be if you were working on your natural schedule. Okay? But so there are actually characteristics about night people that tend to make them be better programmers. There's actually, if you look at the cortisol levels, which is what activates you, what makes you active and wanting to do things, and morning people, the cortisol levels look like that. Okay, this is early morning. This is mid-afternoon. It rises very quickly and then drops off fairly precipitously. Evening people, it starts up much later, never gets quite as high, but it takes a long time to get low again. The peak is much later. So if we were to argue that, let's say, this level right here is where you need to be in order to be a good programmer. If you're below that level, you're probably not thinking clearly enough to program well. You know, the larks have about this much time, whereas the owls have this much time. So I have more time that I can be effective than the morning people do. On the other hand, the morning people are ready to go the instant they come in. And given that most of the important issues that managers have to deal with happen first thing, that's important for them. Okay, but for technical people, having a more sustained time of creativity is more important. So people who are programmers tend to be more like this. So you now have a built-in conflict between you and your manager. And that's actually why this is IT, because there are characteristics about us as IT people that make us different from our managers. And understanding what those differences are will help us to be able to work with our managers better, will help our managers to understand us better, and for everybody to be more productive. So that's why the things that we've actually done some work with, again, Peggy and I together, has been with color and how that might affect your willingness to use a site. I am going to have to bring trust back into this, but we'll actually slide a little away from this part of the model and just say, we'll just tell you that people who trust a website are more likely to use it. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Although, again, that's one of those things that a lot of people ignore, but it's actually critical. You have to get people to trust your website. If they don't trust you, they're not going to use it. So how do you get them to trust it? Well, there are a number of things you can do. There's various, certifications you can get. We'll get into later.
Yeah,
trust. But we're just going to talk about color. Okay, so how do we increase our trust? Well, one of the ways that we can increase trust is by increasing people's emotional state. Okay? People who have a positive emotional state are more willing to trust. And when you're feeling good, when you're feeling happy, okay, you're responding, the environment is making you pleased, you're more likely to trust what's going on around you. So we call that, in psychological terms, we call that positive affect. Positive meaning, there we go, meaning it's good, and affect is your emotional state. Okay, that's great. How can my website increase positive affect? Well, it turns out there are some things you can do. And one of the things that we have studied is how you can use color to do that. Because we have affective reactions to colors. Okay? What color is Microsoft's logo? It's the corporate logo, not the Windows logo.
The main is blue.
Anybody know blue?
The main.
The name is blue. What color is IBM's corporate logo? Blue. Anybody remember Digital Equipment Corporation?
What?
Probably too young for that. Deck. What color is Facebook's logo? Starting to see a pattern?
Blues for trust.
Blues for trust.
Red is for pride.
Okay. So what we looked at is, can we use color to change your affective reaction to a site and thus induce trust? And what we looked at was, actually we looked at a couple of different things. The thing that we've got most of the data on is looking actually at saturation and brightness. Okay. But in fact, also the hue is whether it's blue or red or yellow. And so, for instance, people react really negatively to yellow. They react really positively to blue. So one of the things you find in a lot of marketing research is that if you want people to remember your ad, you should use colors they don't like, because it bothers them and they remember it that way. Sorry?
Just explain, emphasizing that it's the opposite, not something that provokes positive feelings, but negative.
So marketing people think that you should be using green for a background and yellow for a foreground, because that makes people react negatively and remember your ad, remember your page. However, it gets back into this. They've reacted negatively. What does that do to their trust in your site? It reduces their trust. So they may remember your site, but they're not going to use it. Okay? And what we found is that, in fact, I did some changes of hue, although I didn't, actually I did a different study, that's right, I'm sorry, I did do a different study, where we did move between blue and yellow and red. And people reacted more positively to blue. They remembered better with yellow, and red was in between the two. Yeah, that's probably getting into more detail than we need to. So the other thing that we've got more data on is that the more saturated the color is, the more positive your affect is. So you don't want pale colors. You want bold colors. Okay. So your shirt right there, that purple, that is a highly saturated color. Okay? People react positively to it regardless of whether they like purple or not. There you go. Okay. I'm wearing black, which it's by definition highly saturated because it's zero. Okay.
Actually, it's all of it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. There's somebody I can pick on that won't be upset. Okay, actually, way back in the back there, you've got kind of a pale green sweater. It looks like. You? Okay. No, next to you, the lady with the black hair. Your sweater's kind of a pale green, it looks like, or is that a sweater? No, it's kind of grayish, isn't it? No. Sorry. Okay.
What kind of color are you looking for?
Just something that's not saturated. I'm not seeing a lot.
The color in the sleeves of this
Oh, the striped shirt?
The sleeves are kind of brown, but pale brown. Pink one, the other one?
Ah, okay, right here. Right here.
She has everything.
Oh, okay, there you go. Got it. Okay, there you go. Well, and actually, that's kind of telling. Everybody pretty much is wearing something saturated. Okay, there's very little non-saturated color. Okay, this is a non-saturated color. Okay, and actually, how many of you like the color of this wall? How many of you think this is a great color? This has very low saturation.
Especially for a t-shirt.
Of the colored yellow in it. It's not a deep yellow. If it were a deep yellow, it would still be just as bright, but we would respond to it more positively, we'd see it more as a yellow. This is probably the trim on her coat here is probably just as bright as that. Okay.
No.
There you go. But it's more saturated.
This is gold.
I know.
That's too much. Can you imagine a wall or a website with this color? That's even too much gold.
So, increased saturation makes people like you better and trust you more. Increased brightness does also, although it's not as strong. Saturation is actually the biggest thing. So actually, that's one thing that actually there's the colors actually are fairly saturated. They're just also somewhat bright. The logos, Microsoft and Facebook, they are fairly saturated, but they're also fairly bright. So it's hard sometimes to tell the difference between brightness and saturation. So there's how color works into this, and how you can use color to affect the way people respond to your website. So if you use a lot of blue in your background, they're going to trust you more. There you go.
Thank you.
Enough?